Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Well, when you consider my history for many, many years on YouTube, pretty much, I would say 99% of the predictions have come true. And I have another prediction, which is why I set up this new website called The New South Africa Post-ANC. And the reason I did this is because I have absolutely no doubt that within the next 12 months, that's by the end of 2026, Ramaphosa will no longer be president of South Africa. I think the feud he's got with Donald Trump and the United States of America, and in particular over the G20 fiasco, I think he is walking into what we call sinking sand. And he's right now up to his neck in sinking sand, just like the rest of his corrupt ANC cadres. So there are one of two options that are going to happen. Either the government in South Africa will collapse next year, or when the next elections come around in 2029, the ANC are going to be obliterated. But I think it's going to happen before then. I think the ANC are history. I think they're just cattle put out to pasture. Yeah, they've run their race. They've completely screwed up the reputation of Mandela. And they've basically shown the world that the Nguni, Zulu, Xhosa people are basically thieves. That's all they are, thieves. They've stolen the country dry. And yes, there's some good people within that population, but those who've been put in power have totally abused their position and totally screwed South Africa. And so my prediction, I'm going to show you a video in a second, but my prediction is that by this time next year, Ramaphosa will be gone. The ANC will be in absolute chaos if they're still in government. They might even have to call an election to re-establish a sitting government. And if that happens, it's going to be so fractured, it's going to be crazy. But you got rid of the ANC corruption, which is the most devastating thing that's happened to South Africa over the past 30 years. And I've been talking about this long before those new YouTube channels that now claim that they were the first ones to talk about this. I've been talking about this for nearly 10 years, without fear or favor. Just leaving you on that note. Now here comes Ramaphosa responding to President Donald Trump and the fiasco regarding the G20, where the United States never even showed up. And now the United States is saying to South Africa attending the G20 next year. Well, here it comes. Please remember to register on this new channel, which will take us into the late 2020s and hopefully into the 2030s.
Except for one member country. It is regrettable that the United States of America, which is a founding member of the G20 and which takes over the presidency of the G20 from South Africa in 2026, chose not to participate in the G20 Leaders Summit and the final meetings leading up to that summit. It is even more unfortunate that the reasons the United States gave for its non-participation were based on baseless and false allegations that South Africa is perpetrating genocide against Afrikaners and the confiscation of land from white people.
Now, what Ramaphosa has just said there is bullshit. There is a genocide going against people, white people in particular, in rural areas. And yes, I know that it covers all races, but that's because of the incredible chaos that is taking place in South Africa right now. I was there last month, and believe me, everybody was on tenterhooks. They were worried about the future. Well, this is why I'm bringing out this channel, because in the future, Ramaphosa and his gang of criminals will be gone. They'll be gone. There'll be a new South Africa. And when that happens, you're going to have a huge influx of expat South Africans returning to the country they love, but they were exiled from by this corrupt piece of SH1T. So, let's continue with what Ramaphosa has to say in this speech.
This is blatant misinformation about our country.
Oh my God, this is blatant misinformation. Well, Mr. Ramaphosa, let me remind you that during COVID, you made a speech to the nation, which is on my main Loving Life YouTube channel, and you can view the whole thing there, and it's not AI, it's the real McCoy. And in that speech, Ramaphosa says, we will never force anybody to get the COVID vaccination. We will never, 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 never. And we will not restrict people from moving around, and people will be fine. Don't worry about it. Well, months later, I have so many videos about a white woman, for example, with a dog, walking her dog by herself down the streets in Cape Town, being tracked down by the police and being arrested for walking with her dog in the streets because of COVID. How about that absolutely iconic video of a woman running down the beach? And this is what I find so amazingly hypocritical, is that here she is, she's running down the beach by herself, no one around her, she hasn't got a mask on because she's running, and two police come out of their car, and these two police try and catch her. But they're so friggin' fat and big and unfit that they can't even get anywhere close to her, so she just runs away. But the fact is that the police were trying to arrest a woman who is running on the beach because she might spread COVID to the community. I have a much closer target for you, Mr. Ramaphosa, and your corrupt ANC government. You went after people who stood their ground during COVID, especially those who refused to get the vax, which was making millions of rands for you, maybe billions of rands for you in the ANC. But during that time, there were people who stood up and said, and those people were right. And that's been proven to be true. But you, Mr. Ramaphosa, you are worse than... Okay, when I went to boarding school at Michael House in South Africa back in the late 1960s, my first year there, I was a CAC. Now, a CAC is the lowest form of life. It's the yolk of an egg. That's what I was known as, a CAC. You, Mr. Ramaphosa, and your entire ANC ministry and all those cadres who've absolutely screwed South Africa through your corruption, incompetence, inefficiency, and inept aspect to dealing with business. Guess what you guys are? You're not even a cell in the CAC. You are below that. You're a piece of, yeah, you know what. I'm sorry to get hot and heavy here, guys, but seeing the ANC are on their way out, and they've been caught out, and Trump is probably going to lead the way, triumphantly saying, ANC are gone from South Africa. Well, let's listen some more.
We were most pleased that many organizations, businesses, and individuals from the United States participated in large numbers in G20 related activities such as the Business 20 Summit and the G20 Social Summit.
Well, here's a wake-up call, Mr. Ramaphosa, because the live stream video that I watched of the opening of the G20 reflected that if you looked at the entire audience, there was about 1% people of this skin color. 99% were obviously people that you wanted there. The whole thing was orchestrated. Now, the fact is, and this is important, that the Indigenous, the first human inhabitants of South Africa, were not people who are represented by Mr. Ramaphosa. They are basically people who've come in about the same time as the Dutch East India Company came in 1652. The Khoi and the San people, which I happen to know a lot about because I wrote their book, Children of the Mist, which covers their entire history. Well, you'll notice how they're recognized at this meeting, but of course that's just a complete load of baloney because they have absolutely no ability to expropriate without compensation for the lands that were stolen from them by the Nguni, the Xhosa, the Zulu tribes in, for example, KwaZulu-Natal. Do they? No. This is a complete load of codswallop. Let's listen.
African flair, with the participation of traditional leaders and the Khoisan Indigenous people. South Africa, I must say, South Africa also expanded the engagement groups from 14 in Brazil to 22 participating at this social summit. South Africa also took it another step further by introducing legacy projects that will ensure that the impact of the G20 Social South Africa on the African continent will last a lifetime.
South Africa valued their constructive and enthusiastic participation. Earlier this week, we formally handed over the G20 presidency for 2026 to the United States, observing the appropriate diplomatic protocols. A few days ago, President Donald Trump made a statement to the effect that South Africa would not be invited to participate in the G20 in the United States. He repeated untrue statements about genocide against Afrikaners and the confiscation of land from white people in our country. We must make it clear that South Africa is one of the founding members of the G20, and South Africa is therefore a member of the G20 in its own name and right. We will continue to participate as a full, active, and constructive member of the G20.
Now, let's not forget that the Zionists, you know, the radical Jews in Israel, they're actually not Jews, but they claim to be, who are basically formed around big money, I'm talking about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, have basically taken over what's going on in the United States of America. Even Donald Trump and his son-in-law, you know, the one who's going out there and sorting out the problems with Ukraine and was involved in the Abraham Accords and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm talking about Kushner. He is a Zionist. They're in every single, it's like rats. If you have a space where you're storing wheat and there's a hole and the rats get in, well, guess what happens? And they don't do it in the interests of the general population, they do it in the interests of themselves. And that's exactly what's going on in this Trump government with Kushner and other people who are totally infiltrating what the American government are doing.
Despite the challenges and misunderstandings that have arisen between South Africa and the United States, South Africa remains a firm and an unwavering friend of the American people. We recall the great solidarity movement in the United States that stood by our side in our struggle for democracy and freedom. We recall how the Bill of Rights in the United States Constitution inspired us as we wrote our own Constitution. We offer the people of the United States nothing but goodwill and friendship. We affirm our commitment to continue to engage in dialogue with the United States government and to do so with respect and with dignity as equal sovereign countries.
Well, this final bit by Mr. Ramaphosa basically digs his own grave because he tries to appeal to the American people and bypass the president, who, let's face it, is probably the world's greatest narcissist ever known to mankind. But he's done some good things too, despite his narcissism, or that type of tag. Now, my prediction is that as we move into 2026, South Africa is going to be basically destroyed by the Trump US government using tariffs and all the mechanisms they can. And their primary objective will be to remove Ramaphosa as president and to try and bring in a government that basically suits their needs. Because remember, the American government and the Zionists and those sort of lackeys that are all tied up together, they don't care about people. They care about their own power and wealth. So I would suggest that 2026 is where you say goodbye to the ANC and the Ramaphosa era, and I just hope that it doesn't boil down to a situation like Venezuela, where right now, this is November 2025, the US government are looking at actually invading the country to replace the government. But who knows? All I can say is that the ANC are gone, they're finished, their history is going to be a totally new kid in town running the place, and hopefully they will do that on a far more credible way than this corrupted ANC government. Please remember to register on New South Africa, post ANC, to be kept informed. Bye for now.